Do you need help with marketing, new clients, or online reviews? Massage Book is your solution, streamlining all the challenging aspects of your massage therapy practice. This powerful software simplifies scheduling, payments, and marketing, allowing you to focus on what you do best, helping clients live better. Plus, sign up now with code ABMP50 and get $50 off after your free 30-day trial. Visit massagebook.com, create an account, and transform your practice today. That's Massage Book with code ABMP50 for $50 off. Don't wait. Give it a shot today. Calling all anatomy lovers. Embody U's 6-day hands-on fresh tissue cadaver dissection is back. Join founders Ann Teachworth and Allison Wesley in an exploration of what you're really made of. What makes the Embody U dissection lab so special? Explore tissue textures and layers through hands-on dissection, then integrate those insights into your own body with movement embodiments. The lab is held at the Institute for Anatomical Research in Colorado Springs. Get $200 off with code EMBODYABMP. Visit embodyu.net. That's embody, the letter U.net.
Welcome to the ABMP podcast. I am Les Sweeney. I am the president and CEO of Associated Bodywork and Massage Professionals, and it is always nice to be able to talk to you. Before we get started on the conversation today with my good friend Debra Persinger from the Federation of State Massage Therapy Boards, and as we jump in to talk about interstate compacts and regulations, I wanted to take a minute to acknowledge a longtime friend of mine who is deserving of the appropriate bouquets as she winds up her career here with ABMP. As you've probably heard before, I've been around here a while, since 1994. And in 2002, a young lady by the name of Leslie Young joined our team. And we have 17 team members who have been with us for at least 10 years. And Leslie stands out in the crowd for a lot of different reasons, but I wanted to take a minute to just acknowledge her great performance over the past 21 and a half years. She signed on in late 2002 as our editor-in-chief of Massage and Bodywork magazine, a name I'm sure you're very familiar with as the leading publication within this field. And she spearheaded our communication efforts and took our magazine to new heights, confirming its presence as the preeminent publication serving the massage field, which is a position we still enjoy today. Leslie has helped steward many of the important figures in ABMP's success over the past 20 years, either by hiring them or coaching them, mentoring them. And she was also ABMP's professional outreach maven. Everybody in the profession knows and loves Leslie. She was the best ambassador that ABMP could have. She led our public relations and emergency response efforts in all sorts of circumstances that you're very familiar with over the years, whether it was natural disasters or disasters within the field based on issues that have happened. We were always ready with a good answer, a good understanding, and a good explanation of what was happening and making sure that we were putting our service to our members first. And Leslie led those efforts. In 2018, she transitioned to administration and outreach within the organization and became indispensable to us in the area of human resources. And on a personal note, she has been a trusted counsel and source of support for me in my role throughout my time here, and especially in the last 6 years as I've sat in the big chair as president and CEO. She has been an invaluable teammate, and we will miss her tremendously. But she is moving on to greener pastures, and those pastures include her horses and her family, and enjoying time that she has so richly deserved and earns. And we might see her from time to time, but we'll also see her under the sea, pursuing her passion of scuba diving as well. And I just want to take this chance to say, Leslie, hats off to you. As I like to tell our team here, good job by you. I am delighted today to be able to have a conversation with my friend Debra Persinger. Debra is the executive director of the Federation of State Massage Therapy Boards, which, if you're not familiar with, is the organization of the state regulatory boards that govern the massage therapy profession. I've had the pleasure of knowing Debra since 2005 or 2006, and I count her as one of the most important and also one of my most favorite people that I've had the pleasure of working with over the last couple decades in the massage profession. Debra, thank you so much for being here today.
That's a very kind introduction. Thank you, Les.
You are most welcome. Debra and I have lots of conversations about all sorts of things throughout the year, but today I thought it made sense for us to talk a little bit about the Interstate Compact, or what's known as IMPACT. And I figured, Debra, we would probably start with just some basic information because some people who are listeners may not be as familiar with this or may not be living it and breathing it on a daily basis like you have been for the last few years. So let's just start at the fundamentals. What is an interstate compact?
An interstate compact is essentially an agreement between states that they will each adhere, or the licensees will adhere to a uniform set of standards. So in the instance of massage therapy, one would not need to meet new or different standards every time they cross a state line. By holding a multi-state license through the Interstate Compact, they would have the multi-state license that would allow them to practice an agreement that the state boards the legislatures have agreed to adopt between them. Probably most people participate in a compact now without really knowing it. The most common one is the driver's license, so that when you drive across a state line, you don't need to stop and take a new driver's license test or, learn their particular rules of the road or their speed. I mean, you have to still adhere to the speed limits in the state, but it's an agreement that you don't need to take a new exam and be issued 50 different state licenses to drive across the United States.
I was going to say, I think that's a great analogy because although you and I were at a session at one point where I used it as an analogy and an elected official didn't appreciate me using that, but I thought it made good sense. I was very confident in my incorrect analysis. But it is, in essence, you don't cross from Illinois to Indiana, and if my geography is serving me well, and say I have to stop and get my Indiana license. But you do have to abide by Indiana's rules. So you do have to abide by their state's, their speed limits, their traffic guidelines, but it doesn't mean you have to now go get a different license. And this is something that you and I have certainly, as it relates to massage therapy, been advocating for since we started participating in the Coalition of National Massage Organizations now 14 years ago. That was one of the two primary concerns that collectively the organizations identified as key challenges within this field, the other being entry-level practice requirements, and the output of that was the entry-level analysis project in 2014. How did the idea of the compact end up coming to massage therapy?
Well, it's been an evolution, actually. One of the original goals that we still hold today of the Federation and our mission statement is to simplify and standardize the licensing process. And so really we're just looking at removing unnecessary regulatory burdens and removing the burdens from the licensee, the massage therapist. So the compact requires uniformity or agreement between each of the state legislatures. And so the first example that the state licensing boards worked towards was the adoption of the MBLEX, or the Massage and Bodywork Licensing Exam. So that intention was to hold every licensed therapist to the same entry-level standard for competence and safety to practice. That's really been a key feature. And the Federation has continued to work for uniformity. We were instrumental and supportive of the entry-level analysis project to try and it's an ongoing quest, I should say. We have not yet arrived for uniformity in education. And then we also had a resolution put forth by one of the state boards that the membership adopted to get some standards, basic standards for continuing education for the purposes of license renewal. So that has been a work in progress for close to 2 decades. And then the opportunity arose a couple of, or maybe now 3 years ago, when the Department of Defense was offering grants for licensed professions to develop compacts. And so this was, and they sponsored this through a grant administered by the Council of State Governments. So the Federation applied in conjunction, I'll say, with ABMP, and CompTIA was also at the table. We invited all the professional associations and other standard-setting organizations. So we were very fortunate that we were successful in being selected for the grant by the Department of Defense to develop a compact. The interest from the Department of Defense, I'll say, just to quell any fears of why is the Department of Defense involved in massage, is because their interest is in supporting military families. And so often when a soldier is posted to a different location than their home state, the family travels, and the spouse, who, if they're a massage therapist, has often been unable to work and help supplement the family income because they now find themselves in a new state that has maybe more educational requirements, and now they have to go back to school, and that's another 9 months, or they have to take a different exam or have to meet different CE requirements. And then the spouse is posted somewhere else again. So it really hurts the family income. And, obviously they support military families in general. So that's the interest from the Department of Defense, is to support the military families. And the nice thing is that it's not restricted to military families to avail themselves of the opportunity for an interstate compact, but they've opened it up to anybody qualified, a licensed massage therapist in the profession.
Yeah, I think that's one of the real, it's not a hidden benefit, but it's a huge benefit, because I wasn't prepared to enlist just in case I needed to get my compact. I think I would also be rejected. But this is a benefit that the Department of Defense sees in not just massage, but in other fields as well. There's currently a cosmetology compact effort underway. There's discussions about potentially one for estheticians. And we have had the good fortune, and I will give you specifically in FSMTB the lion's share of the credit to being there when the time came to be able to kind of jump into action on behalf of the field. But this specific need, or identified need by the Department of Defense, to provide support for their service people's spouses can potentially benefit everyone in the massage profession. One of the big challenges anytime there are any regulatory initiatives is, how is this going to get paid for? And the Department of Defense is picking up the tab as part of their appropriations budget. So this is a windfall that benefits the profession in the event that it's able to proceed, because the effort behind this is being underwritten by the Department of Defense. That's, I think sometimes perhaps when this has been discussed, that gets a little bit lost in the shuffle of the value and importance of having that effort being initiated and underwritten by the Department of Defense.
And, they also, they had very clear stipulations as well. They didn't just, throw money at massage therapy and say, make it so, have fun. We had to make sure that massage therapy had representation from regulators, legislators, people in the profession, people who own businesses, who are impacted by the profession. The professional associations were at the table. So we had very broad representation. And then, we would have done it anyway, of course, but there was a lengthy, I think, season of maybe 3 or 4 months, I think it was at least 3 months public comment period, where we put draft language and here's what we're thinking, what do you think? Where the profession was able to provide feedback so that we could, fine tune some of the thoughts and the requirements. So, it was a favorable, certainly financially positive influence, and it was, I think, a gift to the profession. Because at the end of the day, this compact is it's an alternate pathway to practice. It's not taking away anything that's already in existence. It's, in my opinion, an improvement and a much more simplified fast track to be able to practice in multiple states. It doesn't change the trajectory of anybody's life. If they like life as they know it and don't like change, then that's fine because the compact won't impact them. It's not for everybody. It's not mandatory. It's for those who are interested in being on the move, being transient, whether, on a permanent basis of a lifestyle, like a traveling massage therapist, or whether it's just a temporary thing to go and visit family and practice while you're in your, in an alternate state. So
it's interesting to me too, Debra, you, and as I mentioned, in spite of our youthful demeanor and timeless good looks, we've been doing this for a while. And as I mentioned, at the outset, we've worked as part of the Coalition of National Massage Organizations. And prior to that, certainly for me, starting in 1995, I worked on legislative issues in the massage field. And one of the things that I can accept blame for, not solely, but I certainly will recognize the fact that there are now 46 states and not many of them are identical in terms of requirements. And we haven't done a good job of that as a profession about getting to a point where there's some uniformity in regulatory regimes. I think the Model Practice Act has been an important step in that direction. And I think the advent of the FSMTB has been helpful, but we haven't done it on our own. And this is an opportunity to help us kind of shortcut some of that process rather than saying, let's go spend the next 30 years trying to get 50 states to have identical standards. We have an ability that's a little bit of a cheat code to say, we can still do this. You can still maintain your sovereignty as a state, but by collaborating and cooperating, you're going to make life easier for your professionals. When it gets down to the nitty-gritty, if someone's listening to this, say, well, how will this affect me? How will it specifically affect a practitioner? And what is, you kind of alluded to it. What's a circumstance where a practitioner might say, hey, I'm interested in, I think I might want to get that compact?
There's two answers. Answer A is for the practitioner who is born and raised in their home state and never wants to leave. It does not impact them in any negative way. And then the other pathway is for those on the move or who may be on the move. It allows them to practice seamlessly between states because the legislatures have compromised to come to an agreeable standard that they'll all adhere to, that every licensee is required to adhere to. I can give you like a summary of what those basic standards are. First of all, one has to have had a massage therapy education of at least 625 hours. Now, the language in the compact is deliberately vague. It doesn't specify that it all has to be core education. So for the people who went to school when their regulatory standard was 500 hours, they would potentially be able to supplement with 125 hours of continuing education to meet that 625 standard. So we're not trying to exclude the qualified massage therapists. The other piece is that they have to have passed a national licensing exam. Since 2007, when the MBLEX came into being, most therapists currently practicing well over 250,000 people have taken and passed the MBLEX. So that would qualify as a national licensing exam. It was intentional to not accept for this compact to have any kind of a state examination because, again, we're looking for uniformity and therapists who meet a minimum standard of qualification. The state has to require continuing education. And again, that's because the people that will be potentially moving around the country with this multi-state license, they're not looking to facilitate people on the move who has never been out of their basement studio. So even though continuing education is required and part of, responsible professional development, it does not specify a certain number of hours or what kind of education one needs to do. So it could be from a state that has 1 hour of CE and that would qualify them or make them eligible for a multi-state license. And then the other key factor for qualifying for the multi-state license is that one must not have committed any egregious felony level crimes like kidnapping, sexual assault, things like that. That's where the massage therapy compact differs from most other professional compacts, only because our profession is hijacked or has been hijacked to some extent by the organized crime and the human and sex trafficking criminal element. And so we're certainly not trying to facilitate human trafficking with this multi-state compact. This is designed for the good guys, if you will. And we're not trying to punish the good guys and having good guys finish last just because we're creating laws and rules around catching a small percentage of criminal elements. So this is to benefit the qualified, licensed, legitimate massage therapists to help them with their professional mobility and license portability.
Let's take a short break to hear a word from our sponsors. Anatomy Trains will be holding our flagship Anatomy Trains Structural Integration ATSI training in beautiful Vancouver starting September 16th, 2024. Progressively build your anatomical knowledge, hands-on manual therapy techniques, and most importantly, seeing and understanding postural patterns and developing strategies tailored to individual needs. We warmly invite you to apply today and bring your bodywork career to the next level. Visit anatomytrains.com for more. Let's get back to our conversation.
It's interesting, as you said, there is a toll we're paying here, which is related to the human trafficking element. The overwhelming majority of licensed massage professionals, these standards that are established as part of the compact are not onerous or prohibitive. They are within reach. And let's say, for example, I was a Texas massage therapist that went to school back when there was a 300-hour requirement, and I haven't continued my education beyond that. Well, you're probably not going to be eligible for a multi-state license, but you're also kind of a glaring exception at this point in terms of what the distribution of training looks like in the massage realm. That is not a typical training path any longer. And so just like we've had members for a very long time. They were California massage therapists who were trained when there was a 125-hour program. And over time, the regulatory regime in California has changed, and most of those people have had to move along. But it's, their times change and standards have changed. And for the overwhelming majority of people that we serve and that I think are within the profession, the standards you described are certainly attainable. If not, either they are already eligible or there's a relatively light lift for someone to become eligible. And as you said, this is also it's not going to infringe on anybody's ability to practice in their chosen location because they're already practicing legally in those states. This is if you say, I have an opportunity or I'm just interested. I want to be a snowbird and I want to work in Arizona in the winter and I want to without having to go through the steps of getting a license in Arizona. That option always still exists. You can always go get a license everywhere. That's burdensome and expensive and time consuming, and in many cases will require you to get additional training and beyond what you already have. Just like I don't have to go get the Indiana driver's license to drive in Indiana. I have the ability to do so. So I think that's an important context because this isn't a zero-sum game, that a positive doesn't suddenly mean there's a negative somewhere else here. This has the potential to be a positive all around. And for the people that aren't involved or don't participate, it is in no way diminishing your ability to earn a living, nor is it diminishing the stature or the recognition that you already have earned. So that's one of the areas I think is important for people to understand that not everything, even though in the political environment we live in now, everything feels like a win-lose. If I'm winning, you must be losing, or if I'm losing, you must be winning. This is not that case. This doesn't have to be that case, and we don't need to look at it from that perspective either. Tell me where kind of things stand now. What is the process now that's happening?
So the statutory language is available now for adoption by each of the state legislatures. Nevada has already adopted it, which is a good thing because their legislature meets only every 2 years. So
good
that
job,
went
Nevada.
through. I mean, also, there's a decent amount of therapists there, but these spa industry there is a big consumer of massage services. So they were certainly interested in fostering the workforce there as well, as is the case in every state. I think we'll find the second state to have adopted will be Ohio, right in the middle of the country.
All right.
And then we had legislation in 2024, but, the sessions have ended. And so we're right now at one complete state, but we're looking at 2025 to enact the compact. We need 6 more states. We need 7 total for the compact to come into existence. And then a compact commission will be formed that's separate from the federation or any other entity. The representatives, the commissioners, will be the executive directors or the chief administrative staff from each of the states that have adopted the compact. So the executive director of the Nevada board will be on the compact commission, for example. So although there'll be a subset of our members, they're actually going to be a member of a commission, which is an entirely separate entity from the federation with its own bylaws and requirements.
If I'm a current practitioner in Nevada and I am very pro compact, I'm basically, if I said, boy, I'm ready to do this, the answer is, well, it's probably going to be a couple of years because first of all, you need 6 other states to get on board. And then the commission has to be seated and promulgate some rules around this as well. So this is not like flicking a light switch. This is going to take a little bit of time, but that just reinforces the value and importance of the effort on a state-by-state basis to try to get the states to recognize and adopt the language. Because, as you said, there needs to be 7 states that have adopted the compact for it to come into existence. And at that point, let's assume for a second that happens, the commission is seated, establishes the rules. The compact now exists. It only exists in the 7. It only benefits the 7 states that have signed on to it. So you'd hope that over time that's going to build. And as we know in some other states or other circumstances, other compacts, this isn't universal right away. It's going to take some time to get there. But we think logic is certainly on the side of moving forward in this. But it could be 5 years and maybe there's 20 states that are participating or whatever the number is. And then suddenly, obviously, just like with driver's license, the more states that participate, the better it is for all the end users, all the consumers. Not only the consumers of massage, but the practitioners. So it does build on itself over time, but there is an initial kind of upfront investment in terms of trying to get, first of all, reaching 7 so it actually becomes into an existence, and then having the commission seated and establishing the guidelines and rules that govern the activation of it.
Yeah, you're right. Once it's adopted, although I think the adoption of rules, we have the benefit of other interstate compacts that we can borrow from instead of reinventing the wheel. So I think it should be fairly swift. All the components are in place. The MBLEX is in existence. The therapists are in many states chomping at the bit for it. I know the workforce, the employer industry, particularly the spa industry, are certainly looking forward to it so they can, help move the workforce and help massage therapists find employment of their dreams during off seasons, peak seasons, and so forth. So like you say, it's a win-win for really everybody. I started out using an analogy, and I have another one as in terms of portability, is the TSA pre-check. People can still take their shoes off and go through security and stand in the long lines. But if they meet the requirements, which are basic safety, fundamental professional requirements, then they can go TSA pre-check. Just because somebody doesn't have a transcript from 1972 or they don't have their birth certificate, it doesn't mean we're going to shut down all of TSA pre-check. The compact is very much preparing this profession for the future. In the future is, like you said, Les, maybe in the next 24 months, it will be here. So this is very forward focused and supporting the massage therapist. For once, the massage therapist does not have to take the hard road. This profession is so used to fighting to be recognized as healthcare and not have to take, STD tests to get a license. And they've just had barriers and hurdles for so long that now we have this, I think, gift on a silver platter for them to choose or not choose. There's nothing mandatory about it. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the profession. Like you say, it's a good thing. I can't think of any negatives, but I'm sure somebody out there will have some questions and maybe concerns. But this is an educational quest as well, which is why I appreciate you affording this opportunity so we can have a casual or candid conversation and still convey accurate information.
Yeah, well, it's, as this is two members of the choir preaching to each other. But this is, I've one of my questions I had, which I think you've already answered, and I'm struggling to come up with the answer, is why wouldn't an organization or individual support this? And I can't give an honest answer of why there's a reason, because I just don't, ultimately, typically, what happens legislatively if there's someone that doesn't support a regulatory initiative in the massage community, it's related to either feeling vulnerable themselves over something, a fear of either diluting or changing the standards, or somehow reflecting poorly on the profession. And none of those things apply in this circumstance. There's not a reason that says, I don't like this because, and I am really struggling to figure out how to fill in that blank, honestly. The other thing is this legislation, the legislation, which is identical in every state as required for it to be passed. It has to be identical in every state. You can't pass varying versions of this. Organizations may quibble about some of the specifics or the language or the requirements, and ABMP, if had written it in a vacuum, it would look a little different. That's okay. That's what legislative is. That's what legislation is. The example I use is the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence weren't unanimously approved documents. They were fought over, negotiated, haggled. They were compromise results. That's what this is. We can't, I have a saying around here that I think especially applies in the regulatory environment, which is perfect is the enemy of the good. And this is the perfect example of that, which is that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to give people an opportunity to expand their ability to practice what they chose to do for a living. So, Debra, you, as always, are generous with your time, not just with me, but with all these things that relate to the profession. And yes, you are not an amateur. You are a professional. You are paid for your time with the Federation, but you are worth every penny and then some. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking some time with us today to cover this, because I know this is important. It's also a passion project for you because you recognize the net gain that will come to this profession by us embracing this. And I salute you for that and cannot wait till I get to see you again, which won't be too long, as a matter of fact.
Thank you, Les. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. I love serving this profession. I'm speechless now, but thank you for the opportunity.
Well, we're stuck with each other, so we'll make the best of it. All right, my friend. Thanks, I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Thanks again to my friend Debra Persinger from FSMTB for her time today. I just wanted to add maybe 1 or 2 minutes of some thoughts related to this issue as well. We've expressed probably on this before, you've read, if you're a longtime ABMP member, you're familiar with this, but ABMP's legislative principles. This has been a personal passion of mine, but also organizationally as well. One of my first jobs when I started with ABMP back in 1994 was to advocate for legislative issues. And our positioning has evolved over those 3 decades. But we always are focused on one specific aspect, which is we are here to fight for the most favorable possible regulatory environment that will benefit our members and the profession. We are a service organization. We are an individual membership organization. I like to tell people I have 80,000 bosses. We are here to serve the interests of the massage therapy profession and the massage therapy professionals. The compact is a no-brainer in my perspective. Anytime we think about regulatory issues, we ask who gets harmed or penalized by the adoption of this issue. I am struggling, as we heard Debra say at the end of the conversation as well, to identify who that is. And I question, in general, the fundamental insecurity around the perspective that this is somehow going to do harm. This is not going to do harm for an individual. This is not going to dilute or water down your credential. It is not going to make it more difficult for people to practice. It's also not going to open the floodgates to unqualified practitioners. It is going to enable people who have chosen to do this as their profession an opportunity for further professional and economic gain within their field. And frankly, I'm really disappointed that our colleagues at the American Massage Therapy Association have decided to oppose the compact as currently written because they have some concerns with some of the language. This is missing the forest for the trees. As we said at the end of the conversation with Debra, perfect is the enemy of the good. It is not perfect. The language is not perfect. There are 46 states that regulate massage. None of the state regulations are perfect. None of us are perfect. Our organization is not perfect. We are getting caught up in the small things and not thinking about the big things. And I expect my colleagues at the other organization that represents a large number of massage therapists to think about the big things and not so much the small things, and recognize that there are more people in the sandbox and you don't get to control all the rules. This has been the ABMP podcast. Thanks for listening.